Hello and welcome to the House of Strength podcast. This is episode number 29. I'm your host, Ryan Muncie, and I want to welcome in our guests for this episode. If you're watching on video, you may recognize Maureen Best. She is the executive director of LEAP, and that stands for Local Environmental and Agricultural Project. Maureen has been on some of our previous podcasts. She is our connection to some of our local farms. And today she is bringing us Amy Willoughby, who, along with her husband Brian, is co-owner and operator of Patchwork Farms. So, ladies, thanks a lot for joining us today.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So, we're in for a treat. We've got some really good information from both of you guys as awesome resources on eating local, but also getting really high quality, good food. So, Amy, let's start with you and Patchwork Farms. Tell us a little bit about what you guys are doing.
Sure. Well, we're in Copper Hill, just up the mountain from here, and we grow a diversified market garden. Is sort of the model that our type of farming is called. And that means that we grow, I think we're up to about 40 different types of vegetables. We grow spring, summer, and fall crops. We do a lot of season extension, which allows us to offer more vegetables to the local community for more months out of the year. And we grow everything organically, but we are certified through a program called Certified Naturally Grown. And the farm has a real focus on selling things as local as possible, just making a lot of community connections, and there's a lot of education that's involved with that. And providing a really high quality, fresh product. We feel that all of our attention to how it is grown and even how it's handled after it's picked, and selling it as direct to folks as we do, all makes it the healthiest choice.
Yeah, that's awesome. I already have a million questions off of just that statement. So you said season extension. How do you do that? What's involved there?
Plastic, in a word. We have a few different structures under plastic, which basically allows us to moderate the temperatures. Like on a day like today is a beautiful gift. But basically we have a heated greenhouse, which is where we grow all of our seedlings, which then become the transplants that we put in the ground. And then we have also what's called a high tunnel, which is a very simple, low-cost structure, just a single sheet of plastic basically over metal hoops, and we grow right in the ground inside of that. And again, it just allows us to control the water and control the temperature and just moderate the extremes, mostly at the beginning and ends of the season. And it produces a really high quality crop.
Okay, very cool. And you also mentioned some extra care once things are picked and kind of harvested. What are you talking about there, and what are some of the things that may go on in other operations that you want to avoid?
A little bit of that cut out.
Okay.
Can you repeat some of that question, please?
Yeah. So you mentioned that you guys take some extra special care after the foods are picked or harvested. So what are some of those things that you're doing, and maybe some of the things that other operations do that you're trying to avoid?
Well, I think one of the biggest differences in how we handle our vegetables and what's commonly sold in the produce department of a supermarket is that it's extremely fresh. Generally, when we bring vegetables to market on a Saturday morning, we have picked them within the last 36 hours. We pick them at their peak of maturity and flavor, and then we handle them extremely carefully. Wash them very well, and then we store them in a walk-in cooler at optimum temperatures. And we also try to, if we do package them, we are careful to offer them in a form that will keep them fresher longer once the customer buys them and takes them home. So to contrast that, certainly with produce, probably at the other end of the spectrum is produce in a supermarket, which is ancient, truly, by the time it gets to the supermarket shelf. Not to mention, it's probably not going to be consumed on the day the person buys it. And each day that vegetable is cut or picked or dug, its nutritional quality is beginning to degrade because it's no longer alive. And so we just really try to shorten that and make sure that we're offering people peak nutrition.
Okay, awesome. So, and I know that you guys, as a farm, you're certified naturally grown. Can you tell us a little bit, what does that mean, and what goes into that on your end to kind of earn that classification?
Sure. Well, that label is through a program through a nonprofit called Certified Naturally Grown, and essentially it was started by farmers, I think about over 10 years now. It's what's called a peer-reviewed certification process, so that basically means other farmers in the program are the inspectors in a three-way system, so that, of course, no one, people aren't inspecting each other. But it's based on the organic standards. So the federal organic standards are the exact standards that these farms follow, but the certification is not through the USDA. So it's a non-federal type of organic certification. So we're not allowed to use the O word, technically, but we're growing to organic standards. It would be comparable to the organic label, but it's certified naturally grown.
Okay, cool. So, Maureen, from a consumer standpoint, and when we go to market, what does that mean for us, or how do we kind of look for that and ensure that the food we're getting is what we want?
Well, one thing that's really great about direct-to-consumer sales or farmers markets is that consumers can ask the producers how they grew a product. And so a lot of, especially small-scale producers, they opt not to do the USDA organic certification program because it's very paperwork intensive, it's very labor intensive, it's expensive. And so a lot of people, they, similar to kind of what Amy was saying, is that they may grow to organic standards, but they are not organic certified. And so the certified naturally grown is another alternative, that there's still a certification, but it isn't as probably expensive or as paperwork heavy. But there are a lot of other producers who don't have any official certification, but they may say they're no spray, or they may say that they're non-GMO, or they may say that they don't use any, chemical pesticides or, petroleum-based, fertilizer. So, if you're at a grocery store, it's hard to have you can't have those conversations with the producers, and that's one of the reasons why the organic certification does exist, because it standardizes it, and then everyone's, when you're using a term, everyone's using the term in the same way on a national level. But at indirect to consumer sales, that isn't necessarily required in the same way, because you can ask in-depth, questions about it, and people have the time to explain, even if it's just a sign that says no spray. What does that mean? Or and so it allows small producers, kind of a step up, that they don't have to go through all the paperwork, but they can still market in a similar way.
Yeah, just to add on that, we do feel that it's helpful because, again, we do mostly direct marketing. We question whether we needed a certification because our customers aren't really looking for that necessarily, and we're not wholesaling any product that's then going to be sit on a shelf separate from us, and all you're going to have is that label to sort of have those questions answered for you. But we did want to support the program because we feel like it's a really important alternative to the organic label, which unfortunately is constantly under attack, and it's getting harder and harder to trust.
So that's I've noticed that too, and I'm glad you brought that up. I would love to hear you kind of elaborate on why that's becoming harder and harder to trust. Just because something says organic, you can't really take that at face value, can you?
Not so much. I don't want to completely debunk, all of the steps that label has, of course, taken to have consumers accept it. You can walk into any large mainstream grocery store and there is a large organic section, which is great because it's making it more accessible to people. But at the same time, because it's such a fast-growing segment of the food industry, let's face it, companies want to make money, and that's a great way to do it, is to start selling, either buying up smaller organic labels and carrying them under yours, or, starting your own label. So there's money to be made there. So, of course, whenever that's, if that's the driving force, unfortunately, we often find that we need to ask, well, is this, true to what it says?
Yeah. And just like any other industry, farming is the system is very tough on the self-start or the small business. So we talked a little bit before we came on the air that you guys at Patchwork have found some ways to actually have a sustainable business. What are some of the ways that you guys went about taking advantage of either grants or ways to kind of get started and kind of get over that hump? Because it's very hard for small farmers to make a living and do what you guys are doing.
There's a tremendous amount of investment, like any business, that comes. And mainly we, initially to buy the land, we did receive assistance through a federal program through the USDA that helps fund startup female farmers as business owners. And that was extremely helpful to us buying the land. And we also received a small operating loan at the same time to purchase some of the small equipment that we needed to get the farm going. But we definitely were really careful about not growing too quickly, like any other business, which is hard because the demand was there. But it's, in addition to sort of just the business end of it, we're working with nature, and there's a lot of factors out of our control. So we're also learning how to be better growers every step of the way, and each year is different. So, while we fine-tune the business aspects, we're also dealing with just the weather and the different growing seasons and what comes our way, and trying to become better growers. And again, it comes back to producing the healthiest food that we can on a small amount of land, because we have a limited land base.
How much land do you guys have?
We own 21 acres, but about half of that is forested.
Okay.
And so we fenced off about 5 acres with the deer fence, which is absolutely essential. Not to mention 3 dogs and a couple other things. But within the 5 acres of deer fencing, we only have about just under 2 acres plowed up, but half of that is cover cropped each season and half of that is cash cropped. So again, that ties into our soil management and resting part of our farm, and then producing cash crops on the other part of the farm.
So you guys are incredibly efficient on that space.
Yeah, well, and you can produce a lot of food on a small amount of land. So we're growing on about 1 acre, and some of it gets cropped twice a year because we're growing a lot of things that have a very short season,
Right.
like a lot of greens and things. So we can harvest them in the spring and then, plant a fall crop in that same ground, which it also means that we need to be especially careful to be taking care of the soil and not exhausting it.
Yeah. So I guess there's 2 questions I want to ask you on that one, and I guess you kind of mentioned that you're rotating crops, and it's not like you. I guess when I think about factory farms, they don't rotate crops that way, and they destroy the ground, and then you have to fertilize it and stuff. So you guys take a lot of pride in your soil quality. So how are you kind of nurturing that, and why is that so important, not only to your efficiency as a farmer, but on our end as a consumer, the product that we're eating?
We definitely feel like first and foremost we're sort of farmers of the soil. I mean, that is our main product. I've often heard growers say that soil is our main product, and these vegetables that it grows for us is sort of a byproduct. And that's a great way to look at it, because truly we feel like the food can only be as healthy as the soil that it is grown in. And in a conventional operation, the soil is so overworked and devoid of, nutrients and organic matter that it's really just a place for the roots to hold on to. And all of these sort of liquid fertilizers and, sort of like high potency materials are just kind of injected and applied, which get the plant to grow, but not necessarily, a very holistic system. Whereas if we're doing a lot of soil building to make sure that again, we want to take care of less land and get as much out of it as we can, but feed the soil at the same time. So we just do a lot of cover cropping when the fields are fallow, and we use only organic materials for fertilizing. And we take a lot of steps to conserve water and protect the soil from erosion. Our farm is fairly flat, but anytime the soil is bare, it's subject to wind erosion, if not water erosion. So, we feel like primarily what we do and what we're always trying to deepen our understanding of is building soil while growing food.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm so happy to hear that we have so many farmers and farms in our area doing that. We are in Roanoke or the Roanoke area of Virginia. So Maureen, how can people who maybe aren't in our area and couldn't take advantage of LEAP and some of the farmers and markets that we've talked about here on our podcast, if people are outside of our area, what should they be looking for, or how do they kind of differentiate, one market from another or one farm from another, in trying to ensure that they're getting food produced in the way that we're talking about here?
Well, I think that's a multi-level question. I mean, if you want more information about farms, there's like Certified Naturally Grown. They have a website that lists all of the farms that are certified naturally grown, and usually there's at least some basic contact information. So you can check out that website to see what farms are listed as being certified naturally grown, and then I know Patchwork does some on-farm sales, so oftentimes farmers will do some direct-to-consumer on-farm sales. If there's a particular production practice or method that you want to support. For markets, I think that there's kind of a balance between asking 20,000 questions to each vendor, because, farmers have limited amounts of time to interact with consumers, but then also, what is most important to you? And so maybe, what's most important to one consumer may be different than what's most important to another consumer. There are some markets that allow reselling, and sometimes reselling means that it's your neighbor's farm that you're buying from and reselling, but sometimes reselling can also mean that you're buying it at a wholesale, like an auction, and then reselling it. And so if you're buying it at auction and reselling it, then you have very little information about how that product is grown. Some markets will also buy produce from other parts of the nation, or from imported products, and then sell them as maybe not explicitly saying that they are or aren't, but just trying to kind of feed on the farmer's market ideology without really meeting that same standard. So I think that, you can ask market managers, you can ask vendors, where is this product coming from? What are your rules? A lot of markets have their rules posted on their website. I know I mentioned before that LEAP has a 100-mile radius rule. So that's our big priority, that we're really supporting farmers within this region. Other markets may have maybe producer only or only from that county. So really trying to figure out what the focus of the market is. It does take a little bit of work on the consumer side, but the information is usually pretty available on websites, or you can directly ask the market manager or any of the vendors. If they're great farmers, and they'll want to maintain customers and really really answer those questions. So
we love when people ask questions, because it shows that they care.
Yeah.
And it's also great because a lot of people assume that because it's at a farmer's market that it's organic. And, it's often not. I mean, we personally feel like local is more important than organic, because, again, you have a direct relationship. And you can, that farmer can get to know what his customers want, what their concerns are, and they can tailor their growing practices and relearn new skills based on what the market demands. So that's another benefit of all the direct sales and people asking questions. And there's another great website, if I might add, too, called Local Harvest. Okay. And that's nationwide, and that's, everything from seeds to packaged value-added products. And you can just punch in your zip code, and it will pull up Any and all farms that have chosen to be listed on that website, it doesn't really have anything to do with, particular certification, but it's a great source for anything local. If you want to buy a turkey for Thanksgiving and you're looking for a local source, it's a good place to go.
Awesome. Yeah, we will, in the show notes, we will have links to any of those resources or sites that you guys may mention, and also, of course, back to Leap and Patchwork and all of your sites. So if for anybody listening, you don't have to try to memorize those. Just go to the blog version of this and click on the links, and it'll take you right where you want to go. So that was a really great answer. So my return is, let's say that I'm a consumer at a market and I can only ask one question. What would be, from each of you guys, what do you think is the best question that a consumer could ask if they only get one question?
I think it totally depends on what your priority is. If you care most about whether or not it's GMO or whether or not pesticides were used or where it was produced, and that's going to shift how, what that one question is. So me as a consumer, I may have a very different single question than you as a consumer. I think most people tend to want to know about how it was grown. So even if it's something along, can you just tell me a little bit how this product was produced? So then it gives the vendor the opportunity to really highlight what they see as their strengths. And then it also, if you're not really sure what you prioritize as a customer, then it's a really good educational opportunity to see, okay, well, oh, you're growing it locally. What does that mean? And it's kind of a good entryway into further follow-up questions. You're not laying out any assumptions, but you're asking.
Okay. Yeah. Amy, what do you think? From a farmer standpoint, how should we?
I love when people ask me. I actually like when people just ask if we grew this. Because again, even though you're at a farmer's market, and that's usually, the main reason for the farmer's market being there is to offer local products. Again, it's nice that people aren't assuming that you grew it. But usually if they do ask me that, I'll quickly say yes, and then follow that up with how we grow things. So again, with organic methods.
Okay, cool. So, and I know that you guys at Patchwork, you do not use any seeds that have been genetically modified. And this is a topic that I've been wanting to get into on the podcast for a while now. So I'm really excited that we have you here today to talk about some genetically modified topics, I guess. So why have you guys made that choice to avoid GMO seeds?
Several reasons, but I want to first say that fresh vegetables, like market vegetables that we grow, there's only one, and I recently learned, variety of a fresh market vegetable that has a GMO offering, and that's sweet corn. It was brought to the market a couple of years ago. I think it was pretty quickly pulled from commercial production because the consumer response was so poor. But, as far as the spinach and beets and carrots and lettuce and all the things that we grow, there aren't actually GMO varieties available. But a lot of the, seeds in the seed industry and seed varieties, vegetable varieties are quickly being consolidated by large companies, and many of them are involved in genetic engineering. And so we have made it a point to steer absolutely clear buying even varieties of seeds for our farm from companies that sell GMO varieties or are engaged in any type of genetic engineering. And it's getting difficult. However, there's several company choices in the U.S. that are very dedicated to offering only non-GMO varieties and not even supporting those companies. So it's nice that you can flip through the pages of the catalog and know that your values aren't being compromised. And they've even pulled varieties from their, they've asked their customers, do you want us to grow, to offer this cherry tomato anymore because it was just bought by Monsanto? And everyone said no, and so they pulled it out of the catalog.
That's awesome.
So
for people listening who may not know exactly what GMO or what genetically modified organisms are, what's behind that label? What does that mean, and why is that a bad thing if we're trying to eat, the highest quality foods?
Do you want to mention that?
No,
You want me to? Okay. Okay, so GMO, genetically modified organism, also goes under the same label as GE, crop genetically engineered, which basically it's an unnatural type of breeding process. Usually there are genes from a totally unrelated species of animal or vegetable or insect even that are inserted into the genetics of these food and sometimes fiber commodity crops. So it's a gene combination that would never happen in nature, and there are virtually no GMO crops on the market that have been genetically engineered for increased nutrition, higher yield. They've all been genetically engineered to support chemical applications, basically. Either an herbicide to kill the weeds, or the plant itself actually produces a pesticide in every cell of its being, which we eat if we don't know that they're in there. So basically, GMOs, there's a handful of them on the market. They're mainly commodity crops, and they can really sneak into the food system and into our diets because most of them are in highly processed foods. So it's not like, that ear of sweet corn that's going to have a sticker on it that says this is GMO. It's very easy for them to be processed into all of these ingredients that sound like a chemistry test that then find their way into our foods.
Okay. So when we eat these things, like you said, we're introducing all those, not only the genetically modified genes of the plant, but also the herbicides, pesticides, all those other chemicals that are, used in conventional growing process. And that's going to bioaccumulate in our bodies the more and more we eat it. And, from a health standpoint, that's definitely not something that we are seeking.
It's a little bit scary. I mean, it really is a big experiment still. I mean, GMOs have been around for over 10 years now, and it's still a big experiment, and a lot of the research has been funded by the very companies themselves that sell these things. So, again, it's a little bit shady.
Yeah.
It's good to ask questions.
A little bit.
And there's a lot of findings, too, now that, it doesn't cost less for the farmers to grow these types of crops. The farmers aren't making more money. They're not yielding more. Their sales are going down, especially when whole continents like the EU are banning the import of these crops from other countries that are growing them. So, the bottom line that the companies try to use for the farmers is falling out. And, the safety, certainly from a health standpoint, it's very unknown still. And there's a lot of environmental effects, too, to introducing these genes to a natural system.
Yeah, that's a really great point that a lot of other countries and even entire continents are banning the import of foods that are grown in a manner that even in our country we just turn a blind eye to. I know, like, for example, Russia bans the import of U.S. meat because of certain additives and things that are in our conventionally grown or produced meats. So that's just, it's really scary. And you mentioned like how GMO foods can sneak into highly processed foods, and even in like conventionally grown produce that it's still sold as whole produce. There's a lot going on right now with labeling and consumers trying to force the declaration of GMO, the presence of GMO foods. How can we as consumers advance that movement and try to make sure that declaration has to be there?
Well, I think that, one thing that a lot of consumers are pushing for is labeling so that people can make a decision as to whether or not it's something that they care about. I mean, right now, there is no requirement in the United States to label whether or not there are GMO products included on especially processed foods. I mean, field corn. Corn is a huge majority of corn is GMO in the United States for a variety of reasons. But that's one of the commodity crops that Amy referenced. So corn and rice. There are some tomatoes, that are also GMO, but it's the staples that are the most common, and those staple commodity crops are also ones that the government supports, and also especially low-income families. That's what a lot of their food consists of, their diet consists of, because it's highly processed and it keeps for a long time. But up until there are companies that are starting to on their own label it because of customer demand, but there still isn't any requirement to have it labeled. So there are some that if companies aren't using GMO, then they're a lot more likely to promote that they're not using it. But you can't assume that if it does or doesn't say anything, that either it does or it doesn't have GMO crops. And it is really interesting because throughout Europe, it's been something that people have just gone up in arms about for 10, 15 years. Burning down fields and doing a lot of civil disobedience, and there's been a response to that, and so there's a lot better labeling there. But most people, I'd say in the States, don't know about it, don't think about it, don't question it. It's not really something that's in the forefront of our minds, and part of that's also cultural, is that we don't really prioritize food and high quality food. So it isn't something that's on big policy agendas because there hasn't really been a big push for it from the populace.
It used to be that the only way to ensure that you weren't eating any genetically modified foods was through the organic label, because they strictly prohibit the use of any genetically modified seed. But now there's voluntary programs like Maureen mentioned, and that comes under another label called non-GMO verified. And that's really exciting because companies that don't sell an organic product are able to still let the consumers know and answer that question for them, that we are, following some very strict standards and having our products tested, our ingredients tested, to let you know that there's nothing GMO in them.
Yeah.
That's powerful.
Yeah, it is. And that's a great label to look for. So my question to you would be, do you know how well we can trust that label? I know we mentioned maybe some trust issues with just seeing an organic label. What about that non-GMO label?
My understanding, even though it's very new, is that it's gaining a lot of support, and that I haven't heard of any cases of that those standards being breached. I think it's a pretty rigorous process. I mean, their ingredients are tested, and those test results allow the company to say either choose to use that ingredient or not in their products. And it is powerful to give the consumers that choice. And big companies, such as McDonald's and Dannon and Gerber, are putting their foot down and saying, we don't want to use GMO ingredients. And, that directly translates back to what farmers are going to grow, which directly, affects the companies that are trying to sell these seeds and chemicals. So it's really important to take that, awareness and vote with your dollar, really.
Yeah, that's a great point. And Maureen has talked about that on some of our previous episodes of the podcast, where, every dollar that you spend on food is a vote. And, that's a very good point. So, so for everybody listening, be very cautious where your dollar goes, and pay very close attention to who you are supporting and what you're supporting. So, Amy, I have another question for you. I know we talked again before we started recording that you guys have your produce in some of our restaurants here locally. So that's a really cool thing. One of my issues with eating out has always been, that concern of where your food comes from. And I think it's very awesome that we have restaurants here locally that, acquire food like yours and prepare it in a way that meets the standards of that discerning consumer. So how have you guys been able to start that relationship and get your food in local restaurants?
Well, fortunately, it's pretty easy. I mean, again, we have a really high quality product, so when a chef sees it, it's kind of a non-decision. But there's so many supportive restaurants around here, truly, that are looking for as much local product. Even if it's not sort of the theme of the whole restaurant, chefs know that it's the freshest and it tastes the best, and they want people to come back and eat at their restaurant again and again and again and again. So it would behoove them to source as much local product as possible. Right here in Grandin, Local Roots has been an amazing supporter of us and many other local farms since their doors opened. And we're really thankful for that, because in combination with our other types of marketing, it's an important part of our farm business model, truly. There's a few other chefs in the Roanoke area. Many of them will shop at the farmers market, or they'll pre-order with us. And again, they know too it's a high quality product and it's fresh. And sometimes it's on their menu and sometimes it's not, but it's also another great place for customers to ask questions, and it just sends the message to the wait staff and or the owner that people want more of this.
Yeah, so that's really cool. Maureen, I know Amy just mentioned something really cool that I'd never thought about. So chefs going out on their own and shopping at a farmer's market. Is there a way as a market director that that can kind of be kind of prodded and nudged along?
Yeah, so there are a lot of markets that have kind of high-end cooking demos that really highlight the chefs, and so using it as a marketing tool for the restaurants to say, hey, these restaurants are doing this, and also something that's attractive for the customers. And so we haven't done that at Grandin, but we were actually talking last week about having that on our in our plans for the 2015 season to really formalize and really highlight some of these relationships that have been really informal for years. I don't always know who's shopping, but all the vendors do, and they know where they're coming from. And I've heard stories about, the chef from Blue Apron was here and he invited, he bought something from a vendor and said, you should really come to dinner tonight, we'll give you a discount, or something like that, because we're going to be highlighting your product. I think that there are a lot of individual chefs that support that, and I think that there's a lot of ways that we as a community can really promote each other, and we just haven't had the time or staff to do it yet, but it's been very successful in other markets across the United States.
Cool. That's really exciting. So from somebody who's eating out, again, that consumer standpoint, is there a way that we can try to, do you know of a resource where people can go and say, how do I find a restaurant that's serving, local food or anything like that?
So locally they have, in the Roanoke Valley, they put out a local board directory 2 years ago, and working on putting out another one that highlights farms and then also restaurants that really that use local ingredients. I think one of the biggest questions is always that how do you really verify whether or not restaurants are using local ingredients, or maybe they used it once and then they didn't use it again, because you don't want to kind of wash it all down. Right. So just because you use one thing, what level of commitment is that really? And so I think that that's part of the difficult conversation in promoting one restaurant over another. Sometimes is that you don't want to assume that they always do it, or and maybe a chef changes and then the policies change. But farmers are the ones who know who's buying product on a regular basis. Right. So that's probably also a question you can ask your farmers. Are there any restaurants that you sell to in the area? And then that's they're not doing it from a promotional perspective. So it's probably pretty accurate information. And of course you can always ask restaurants. And I know that in a lot of communities, that's what they really encourage people to do, is just to go around and say, hey, do you buy anything locally? Oh, you don't? And then they leave, just to kind of have this guerrilla marketing approach to just to really get that priority out there.
Okay, cool. Amy, I know you mentioned Local Roots. What other restaurants in the Roanoke area have your produce and foods?
Consistently, the Bent Mountain Bistro in Bent Mountain does. They've been open for about a year, and they've been very supportive in getting local meats and eggs and produce from us and other local farms. And then in the past, less consistently, as far as product on our end, again, it's a supply problem for us. But we try to have as much as we can when people want it. So in the past, Lucky Bar has bought produce from us and the Blue Apron in Salem.
Awesome.
Hopefully I'm not leaving anybody out. I don't think I am, because there's not that many, because we're small, and the market, the farmers market again is our priority, because it's retail sales for us, and that helps our bottom line the most.
Okay.
But it is nice, that customers want to go out and enjoy a meal, and they'd like to carry those values into their dining experience. So it's great when we get asked.
Yeah, and that was my next question, is if people want more information on you guys and what you do, where can they get that information? But also if they want to get some of your awesome produce, where can they get that?
We don't have our own website yet per se, but we are listed on the Local Harvest website, and on the Certified Naturally Grown website actually has an extensive profile that also you can view our whole application, and it answers a lot of questions about how exactly we grow things. So the best place to buy produce right now, if you're in the Roanoke Valley, is at the Grandin Market. Maureen can probably do a better job of plugging these than me. And then since Grandin has ended, we are at the West End Market on Tuesdays, which is today, from 3 to 6. And we'll be there at least through Thanksgiving and probably into December. And if you're up the mountain or anywhere else outside of Roanoke, you could send us an email and get on our mailing list if you'd like. And that's what we offer for folks that want to pick up at the farm. And those are the main outlets right now.
Okay. So we'll put links to all that stuff in the show notes. That way people can find you guys. And Maureen, do you want to let everybody know where we can get more information on LEAP and those markets that you guys are involved with?
Yeah, so since it is winter, the season does slow down a little bit, but there are a lot of growers who do season extension, like Patchwork and Professor's Garden, Ferguson Farm, Good Food, Good People. They have at least some level of produce, storage crops, potatoes, apples. They will last for a while, and then greens. In this climate, you can grow greens pretty much year-round. So we do have a year-round market, and that's in the West End neighborhood, behind the Freedom First Credit Union branch on Patterson. So that's every Tuesday, 3 to 6, rain, snow, shine, any weather. Someone will be there, and then Glenn Ramsey, who was on an earlier podcast, he also sells chickens and eggs year-round as long as there's production there. So I think that especially for this part of Virginia, one thing that we can really work on, supporting as customers, is to support year-round market, because there are producers who choose not to because they want some time off, but Virginia is able to have year-round production, but as consumers, we don't usually think about that because we want tomatoes year-round, and tomatoes won't necessarily grow year-round, but you can have greens, you can have storage crops. So really thinking seasonally and supporting what is available seasonally. You, of course, will probably have to supplement with something else, whether that's food that you process during the summer, or, I think that having an ideal of 100% local is challenging, and probably not realistic, but, we have to support the farmers if we want to increase having year-round production.
Yeah, that's a great point. It goes both ways. I mean, if we're going to, as a consumer, if we're going to scream and shout and, like they do in Europe, burn fields, asking for a certain product, then we do have to do our part as a consumer to seek it out and support the people who are producing that for us. So, and you mentioned GW. He was on, I think it was episode 19 of the podcast. And if you haven't listened to that one, please go back and listen to it. GW is an awesome person, and he swears that his chicken will be the best chicken you've ever had, and I can attest that it is. So definitely listen to that one, and if you're in Roanoke, check out those guys and get some chicken from him. So, one more question for each of you guys. Same question. We'll let both of you guys take a turn in answering this. If the people listening only take one thing away from this episode, what's your biggest take-home message from what we've been talking about today?
I'll take it first.
Okay. I thought this might be a question, so I have one.
Okay. All right.
Much inspired by a recent reading of Michael Pollan's latest book, Cooked. Hopefully he's a household name by now. But I have to agree with him that perhaps the single most important thing people can do to improve their health and well-being is to cook. You're controlling the ingredients, you're controlling the portions. Don't leave that to a food manufacturing company or some large corporation, and eat at home. Cook, spend some time in the kitchen. You have to shift your day around a little bit, spend a little bit more time, acquiring the raw ingredients, figuring out what to do with them, which doesn't have to be much, because when they're fresh, they're tasty, and it doesn't have to be anything elaborate or fancy. It just can be simple and good. So that's my take-home message. The single most important thing people can do to both reform their food system and their health is to cook.
Awesome. I like that answer. All right, Maureen, what do you have for us?
I don't know. I think that, at the end of every day, I really think that it's important to think about where your food's coming from, and to question it. If you've never heard of GMOs, read about them. If you've never, thought about what organic means, read about it, and really educate yourself. I know that we live in a world where there's so much information out there, and we may prioritize, the latest technology craze or the latest, Hollywood story. But, food is what drives us. It's what we're putting in our body every day. And I think it's, it's high time for us as a culture to really prioritize that. And I think that it benefits the world over if we really put some time and thought and attention and intention into what we are consuming.
That's very well said. I couldn't agree more. So let's close it on that. Thank you both for hanging out with us today. Like I said, for everybody listening, all the links and resources that we've talked about will be on the show notes. So go to houseofstrengthgym.com, check out the blog version of this. You'll be able to see the video. Click on all the links and use the resources that we've talked about today. And until then, we'll see you next time. And thanks a lot for listening. Thank you guys for hanging out with us today and sharing your information and wisdom with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.